Shadows are great at increasing your overall damage as they can offer really powerful buffs and also debuffs, which is why today I'll be doing a tier list of all of the best shadows in solo leveling Arise. And this right here is the tier list as we have the S, A, B and also the C tier alongside 7 different shadows for me to rank. And the very first shadow is Big Rock, and Big Rock is the latest shadow to be released. And overall, if you looked at all of its skills like Pulverize as well as also Tectonic Shift, you'd realize they only really deal damage and that is literally it. And this goes across all of its other skills as well that also only deal damage, which overall would make you think it doesn't really have much value. However, where all of Big Rock's value is going to come from is going to be through its Shadow's Authority buff, as this will increase your entire team member's basic skill damage by up to 11%, with that being the maximum, but if you have it at common rank, then it will only increase your damage by 8%. And this effect can be beneficial for literally any DPS in the game, as pretty much every DPS is going to use a lot of basic skills. But if you're using a character like Mireille, then you're also going to benefit from it even more, as Mireille does a really good job of resetting her basic skill cooldowns, as well as just reducing her cooldowns as well, through her Possess buff, through her ultimate, which means she's going to be spamming a ton of basic skills, which means she'll be doing a ton of damage just in general. But if you do pair up Mireille with someone like Big Rock, then you're going to be able to get even more damage, which overall makes Big Rock an amazing shadow. So easily for me, Big Rock is going to instantly go up into the S tier. This is an amazing shadow that's good for literally any piece of content in the game. Blades is up next, and Blades is also a pretty good shadow, as its basic skill Frost Gazer is really good at taking out massive hordes of enemies, as well as also he does have the ability to increase his own attack stat by 100% through his Spinning Strike skill. And then for Blade's Shadow Authority buff, all it's going to do is just increase your whole entire team's attack stat by 6%, or 3% if you do have him at common rank, which overall is also going to make Blades a very good shadow for you to have. However, he can't be run with other scaling DPSs like Charlotte, who's like a defense scaler for example, so he's not really good for characters like that, which overall I think is going to put him up into the A tier. I still think he's pretty good. Cerbie is also one of the latest shadows to be added to the game, and in my opinion is actually the best. As let's start off with Cerbie's Shadow Authority this time, and what this will do is basically it will increase all of your team members' critical hit damage by up to 7%, with the bare minimum being 4%. And unfortunately, this just isn't a very good increase, as a 7% increase in your crit damage just isn't going to be very beneficial whatsoever. But Cerbie is kind of the opposite of Big Rock, as all of Cerbie's value is going to come through all of his skills, with the two main ones being Concentrated Flame and also one of his basic attacks. And this isn't necessarily for the damage they deal, but the debuff that it does apply, as when this skill hits, you'll be able to apply the Combustion effect, which will deal damage equal to 50% of the user's attack every 3 seconds, which is okay, it's nothing too crazy, but the main thing about this is the fact that whenever an enemy does have this debuff, they'll be able to take 5% more damage, which again doesn't sound very valuable, but then the main value comes from this is through the duration of the debuff, which is infinite. So easily going to go into the S tier. I think this is the best shadow in the game. Maybe Big Rock is, I'm not too sure. But yeah, Cerbie is an absolute monster. I think as a shadow, Igris is definitely a jack of all trades, as he has a great Shadow Authority buff, as well as also some very valuable skills that he can use. But let's start off with his Shadow Authority buff, and obviously if you have him at Elite Knight rank, then you can increase all of your team members' critical hit rate by up to 7%, with it only being 4% at common rank, which is easily going to be one of the best Shadow Authority skills for you to have, as it can be used with literally any damage dealing character in the game apart from Choi Jong-in, which is going to be literally his only limitation for you to have, which overall I think is not too bad considering he's the very first shadow you do get in the game. But outside of that, Igris himself can actually deal a lot of damage, as his basic skill Blade Axle can increase his own attack stat by 100%, which is going to make all of his other skills do a lot of damage. So yeah, for me, Igris is definitely going to be one of the top shadows in the game, and is also going to go into the S tier. Just like the Cerberus shadow, Iron is also going to play a very similar role in supporting your entire team. Iron's Shadow Authority of increasing all team members' maximum HP by 10.5% just isn't very useful at all, as all of the best DPSs in the game are attack scaling DPSs. But not to worry, as all of Iron's value is going to come through all of his different skills, with the two main important ones being Iron Angry, as well as also Charge Iron. But let's start off with the first one I mentioned, and that is Iron Angry, and the main point of this is just to be able to apply a shield to all of your shadows, which is equal to 10% of your own max HP. But also with a shield, you will also be able to give them super armor, which will make them resistant to things things like knockbacks and also that kind of stuff, which will make this skill very valuable. But then in my opinion, his best skill is going to be Charge Iron, which is just going to do a tiny bit of damage, but again, the main important part of it is going to be the defense decrease debuff that it does apply, which will decrease your target's defense by 12% for 10 seconds, which will be pretty damn good. But the main value in being able to do that is going to be because of the fact that all of the top teams in the game, for at least on the hunter side of things, don't really have a way of decreasing your enemy's defense, which means this is going to give you a ton of value in your hunter teams, just because of the fact that Iron can apply something that most really good teams can't. But is that going to put him into the S tier? I don't really think so. I think A tier is going to be fair enough. Tank is up next, and in my opinion, Tank is probably the worst shadow in the game by far. The all team members defense increased by up to 10.5% from 6% at common rank just isn't really going to be very useful whatsoever, as the only team that can benefit from it a little bit is going to be a team like the Dark team, as Charlotte is a defense scaling DPS. And then also all of Tank's skills just aren't going to be very good, as his basic skill Tank Overkill will deal a decent amount of damage, to be fair, but then the buff it does apply is a defense increase to all of your shadows, which is going to be an increase of 40%, which will last for 10 seconds, which overall again is okay, but me personally, I would much rather have the shield that Iron does give, as well as also his defense decrease. And then his other important skill is going to be Tank Press, and this will do an okay amount of damage, nothing too crazy, but it will also be able to stun the target for 1 second, or pretty much for the duration of the whole skill of Tank Press, which is not too bad. I'd probably say it's the best part of it, of his kit, but again, just isn't going to be the most necessary thing for you to have. So yeah, honestly, Tank is going to probably be the one and only shadow that is going to go into the C tier. I just don't really see most people using it. Obviously, if you like Tank and you want to use it, that's fair, but for me personally, I don't think he's very good. Which leaves the very final shadow on this list, and that is going to be Tusk. And let's start off with Tusk Shadow Authority, which is only really going to be good for the mono water team and also the mono fire team to an extent. This will increase all of your team members' core attack damage by up to 35%, but if you do have him a common rank, then that will only be 20%, but that's still usable, of course. And like I said, this is going to be really good for the mono water team, as Alicia does absolutely spam a ton of core attacks, which is going to be really good. And then also his skills aren't too bad. They're nothing too crazy, but they are pretty useful, as his main skill is going to be Concentrated Heat, which is a pretty good skill, and then when you use this skill, you can apply the attack increase effect to all of your shadows, and this will overall be a 20% increase. So if you want to use him as a supportive shadow that will perhaps increase either your blades or your big rocks or your Igris's damage, then that'll be pretty good. And then as for all of his other skills, they just deal damage, and that's literally it, so nothing too important there, which overall for me is going to put Tusk all the way up into the A tier. Overall, I think he's really good. However, I do think he's a little bit limited with his Shadow Authority buff that he can give to your team members. So there you have it for today's video. Overall, there's a lot of good shadows in the game, and overall they are balanced pretty well, but unfortunately Tank just isn't very good, at least in my opinion. But most importantly, if you did enjoy this video or you just found it useful in general, then don't forget to like and subscribe and click the link down below to support me as a creator. And of course, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!